Captain Zethkar of the Vortanian Trade Guild stared at his navigation console with growing confusion. The holographic star chart displayed before him showed a vast expanse of mapped space, thousands of systems connected by trade routes and diplomatic channels. But at the edge of what the galaxy called the Outer Rim, the chart simply stopped. "Navigation Officer Melthos," Zethkar called to his subordinate, "explain to me again why our charts show nothing beyond the human territory marker." The younger Vortanian's head tentacles twitched nervously. "Sir, according to Galactic Cartographic Authority records, that region is marked as Restricted Navigation Zone, Human Sovereignty. No vessels have been granted permission to map beyond those coordinates for the past 2 centuries. Zethkar's 4 eyes narrowed. In his 50 years of commanding trade vessels across the galaxy, he had never encountered a species that could maintain such absolute territorial control. The humans had appeared on the galactic stage relatively recently, claiming a modest collection of systems on the rim. Most species had dismissed them as another primitive civilization that would eventually be absorbed into the greater galactic community. Yet here they were, 200 years later, and their borders remained as impenetrable as the day they first made contact. "Sir," Communications Officer Vardena interrupted from her station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human monitoring post ahead." On screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female in a crisp blue uniform. Her species looked deceptively fragile compared to the robust Vortanians. But something in her steady gaze made Zethkar unconsciously straighten. "Captain Zethkar," the human said, somehow knowing his name despite never meeting him before. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Outpost Delta 7. You are approaching the boundary of human-administered space. Please state your business." "Commander Chen," Zethkar replied with practiced diplomatic courtesy, "I am Captain Zethkar of the merchant vessel Prosperity's Dream. We carry trade goods destined for the Andromedan colonies beyond your territory. We request passage through your space, as guaranteed by the Galactic Commerce Accords." Commander Chen's expression didn't change, but Zethkar noticed a slight pause before she responded. "Captain, I'm afraid that's not possible. Human space is currently closed to through traffic. I can provide you with alternative routing that will add approximately 3 weeks to your journey." "3 weeks?" Melthos blurted out before Zethkar could stop him. "Commander, with respect, that routing would take us through pirate-infested space and add enormous fuel costs. Surely there must be some accommodation." "The boundary stands," Chen interrupted firmly. "No exceptions." Zethkar felt his temper rising. "Commander, I must protest. The Galactic Commerce Accords clearly state that no single species may block established trade routes without just cause. I demand to speak with your superior." For the first time, Commander Chen's expression shifted slightly. It wasn't anger or fear, but something that made Zethkar's survival instincts suddenly scream warnings he didn't understand. "Captain," Chen said quietly, "you really don't want me to call my superior. Trust me on this. Take the alternate route." The transmission ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. In all his years of dealing with various galactic species, he had never encountered such absolute certainty. Not arrogance, not bluster, but simple, unshakable confidence that their word was final. "Sir," Vardena said hesitantly, "I'm detecting something odd. The human outpost. It's not showing up on our deep scans." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's there. We can see it. But our sensors can't penetrate it at all. It's like it's made of nothing, or everything. The readings don't make sense." Zethkar moved to the sensor station and examined the readings himself. The human outpost appeared to be a modest structure, perhaps 300 meters long. But their most advanced sensors, capable of detecting individual life forms on a planet's surface from orbit, simply couldn't see inside it. "Run a full spectrum analysis," he ordered. Minutes passed as the ship's computer processed the scan. When the results appeared, Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. The outpost wasn't just shielded, it existed in a way that defied their understanding of physics. The energy reading suggested something impossibly dense and powerful, as if a star had been compressed into the size of a building. "Sir," Melthos whispered, "what are the humans hiding?" Before Zethkar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Multiple contacts approaching!" Vardenna shouted. "Vector, impossible! They're coming from everywhere at once!" The view screen automatically switched to tactical display, showing their ship surrounded by dozens of red dots. But when Zethkar looked out the bridge windows, he saw nothing but empty space. "Where are they?" he demanded. "Sensors show them right on top of us, but visual confirms empty space. Sir, I think they're—" The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the bridge in red light. Every system on the ship had been simultaneously disabled and then reactivated in less than 2 seconds. Commander Chen's voice came through the speakers, though no communication channel was open. "Captain Zethkar, you have just experienced a demonstration of human defensive capabilities. Your ship's systems were completely under our control for 1.7 seconds. In that time, we could have done anything we wished to your vessel and crew. Please understand that this was us being polite." Zethkar's hands trembled as he gripped his command chair. His ship was a state-of-the-art Vortanian vessel, protected by shields and armor that could withstand attacks from entire fleets. Yet the humans had effortlessly bypassed every single defense without him even seeing how they did it. What do you want?" he managed to ask. "We want you to take the alternate route," Chen replied. "And Captain, when you return to Vortanian space, you will report that the human boundary is secure and passage is not possible. You will not speculate about our capabilities. You will not attempt to gather intelligence about our territory. You will simply accept that this region of space is off-limits. And if I refuse?" There was a long pause. When Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed to press against Zethkar's mind. "Captain, in the 200 years since humanity established this boundary, exactly 736 vessels have attempted to force passage or gather intelligence about our territory. Of those 736 vessels, 736 have never been seen again. Not destroyed, not captured, simply gone, as if they never existed." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. "The choice is yours, Captain. Take the long route or join those 736 ships in whatever destination awaits those who cannot respect clearly marked boundaries." Zethkar closed his eyes and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. "Navigation. Set course for the alternate route. Maximum speed." As the Prosperity's dream turned away from human space, Zethkar caught a glimpse of something on the edge of his sensors. For just a moment, the empty space around the human outpost shimmered, revealing glimpses of massive structures that shouldn't exist. Ships the size of moons, stations that bent space around them, and weapons that registered energy outputs comparable to supernovas. Then the shimmer faded, and there was nothing but a small outpost and empty space. 3 hours later, as they jumped to hyperspace, Zethkar finally understood why the galactic charts ended at human territory. It wasn't because no one had mapped beyond that point. It was because no one who had tried to map beyond that point had ever returned to tell what they found. As the stars blurred into lines around his ship, Captain Zethkar made a mental note to file the most boring, routine report possible about his encounter with human border security. He would mention nothing unusual, nothing threatening, nothing that might inspire other captains to investigate, because deep in his hearts, he now understood something that the rest of the galaxy had chosen to ignore. Humanity didn't maintain their boundary through diplomacy or even superior technology. They maintained it through something far more effective: the absolute certainty that crossing that line meant disappearing forever. And as his ship fled through hyperspace toward the safety of known space, Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that Commander Chen had been trying to save his life. The question that would keep him awake for months afterward was simple: save his life from what? Behind them, human space remained as mysterious and impenetrable as ever, its secrets guarded by the most effective defense of all: the complete and utter certainty that some boundaries should never be crossed. In the depths of space, Outpost Delta 7 returned to its quiet vigil, and Commander Chen filed another routine report about another merchant captain who had seen reason and turned away. She didn't mention the massive fleet that had been ready to emerge from stealth if diplomacy failed. She didn't mention the weapons systems that could have erased the Vortanian ship from existence without leaving so much as a molecule behind. And she certainly didn't mention that Outpost Delta 7 was actually the smallest and least significant defensive installation in the entire human border network. Some secrets she knew were best kept secret, even from those who thought they were ready to handle the truth. Admiral Korthak Avel of the Hegemony Defense Force stood before the assembled War Council, his scaled features grim in the harsh light of the briefing chamber. Representatives from 17 different species filled the circular room, each one a military leader who had never known defeat. Until now. "Colleagues," Korthak began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered star systems, "we face an unprecedented situation. For 2 centuries, we have allowed the humans to maintain their mysterious boundary. We have respected their isolation, assuming they were simply another primitive species that preferred solitude. This assumption was a mistake." The crystalline representative, General Thex Mora, spoke with a voice like breaking glass. "Admiral, with respect, the humans have never threatened anyone. They maintain their borders, conduct limited trade, and avoid galactic politics. Why should we concern ourselves with their affairs?" "Because," Korthak replied, activating the room's central holographic display, 3 months ago, the Vortanian merchant Captain Zethkar filed a routine border encounter report. The report itself was unremarkable. However, our intelligence analysis of his ship's sensor logs revealed something extraordinary. The hologram showed the recorded encounter between the Prosperity's Dream and the human outpost. To most observers, it appeared routine: a merchant ship approaching a border, being turned away, and departing. "What you are about to see," Korthak continued, "required our most advanced computer enhancement to detect." The image shifted, enhanced and filtered through algorithms that could detect the faintest energy signatures. Suddenly, the empty space around the human outpost revealed its true nature. Massive ships materialized on the display, weapons platforms that defied conventional understanding of scale, and defensive installations that registered energy outputs equivalent to stellar phenomena. The council chamber fell silent. "By the void," whispered General Yilmorth of the Arachnid Confederation, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "How many ships?" "Conservative estimate: 7,400 vessels of unknown classification. Each one appears to be larger than our heaviest dreadnoughts. And this was just one minor border outpost." High Commander Zelthan of the Robotic Collective processed the information with mechanical precision. "Analysis indicates human technological capabilities exceed our combined fleets by a factor of error. Calculations exceed computational parameters." Korthak nodded grimly. "Exactly. We've been operating under the assumption that our combined civilizations represent the pinnacle of galactic military might. We've been wrong for 2 centuries. General Braxton of the warrior clans, a species known for their aggression and martial prowess, leaned forward. If the humans possess such power, why haven't they expanded? Why haven't they conquered us all? That, Korthakvel said, is the question that keeps me awake at night. A species with this level of technological advantage should be unstoppable, yet they content themselves with a small cluster of systems on the rim. Either they're completely peaceful, which seems unlikely given their defensive capabilities, or they're waiting for something, finished Prime Minister Zalanth of the Diplomatic Corps. The room erupted in discussion as 17 different species tried to process the implications. The humans weren't just another civilization, they were potentially the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and nobody knew what they wanted. There's more, Korthakvel announced, waiting for silence. Yesterday, our deep space monitoring stations detected an anomaly in the Andromeda sector. Something is coming. Something big. The holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. A massive gravitational disturbance was approaching, moving faster than anything in their records. Preliminary analysis suggests an extragalactic invasion force. Size, unknown. Composition, unknown. Estimated arrival, 6 months. General Thex Mora's crystalline form flickered with agitation. How do we know it's hostile? Because, Korthakvel replied, highlighting a section of the sensor data, it's systematically destroying every solar system in its path. Whatever this force is, it doesn't negotiate. It consumes. The council chamber descended into chaos as military leaders began calculating fleet strengths, discussing defensive strategies, and planning evacuation protocols. Through it all, Korthakvel noticed one thing. Every single species was thinking the same thing, though none wanted to say it aloud. They needed the humans. "Admiral," called out General Braxton over the noise, "what do we know about human military doctrine? If we're going to request their aid, we need to understand how they fight." Korthakvel activated another display, this one showing historical records. "Very little. The humans have been involved in exactly 0 interstellar conflicts since joining the galactic community. However, our xenoarchaeologists have studied their planet's history extensively." Images flashed across the display, ancient battlefields, ruined cities, monuments to forgotten wars. Humanity's development was shaped by constant warfare. For thousands of years, they fought each other with increasingly sophisticated weapons. Their planet bears the scars of conflicts that would have destroyed less resilient species. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, planet-spanning conflicts that consumed entire continents. And yet they survived, observed High Commander Zelthon. More than survived, they thrived. Every conflict pushed them to develop new technologies, new strategies, new ways of winning impossible battles. When they finally achieved space travel, they had already mastered every form of warfare imaginable. General Yilmorth's 8 eyes focused intently on the display. "What about their culture? How do they view warfare now?" "That's where it gets interesting," Korthakvel replied. "Human culture post-space travel emphasizes peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding. They appear to have learned from their violent past and chosen a different path. However," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "However, our psychological profiles suggest that humans possess what their own scientists call controlled violence potential. They have evolved the ability to switch from peaceful cooperation to absolute ruthlessness when survival is threatened. It's not rage or bloodlust. It's cold, calculated efficiency in the application of overwhelming force." The room fell quiet again as the implications sank in. "So," Prime Minister Zalanth said slowly, "we're dealing with a species that has mastered the art of war but chooses not to practice it, possesses weapons we can't even understand but doesn't use them for conquest, and has been quietly building defenses for 2 centuries while we assumed they were irrelevant." "Correct. And now we need their help to survive an extragalactic invasion that's already destroyed everything in its path. Also correct, General Braxton stood, his massive frame towering over the council table. I volunteer to lead the diplomatic mission to human space. Absolutely not, Korthak Vel replied immediately. General, with respect, the warrior clan's approach to diplomacy involves challenging the other party to single combat. We need someone with more subtle skills. I'll go, announced Prime Minister Zalanth. The diplomatic corps has protocols for first contact with unknown civilizations. High Commander Zelthan's mechanical voice cut through the discussion. Analysis suggests traditional diplomatic approaches may be ineffective. Humans have demonstrated they prefer isolation. They may not be interested in galactic survival if it doesn't threaten their own territory. Then what do you suggest? Asked General Thexmora. We tell them the truth, Korthak Vel said quietly. All of it. We admit that we've been watching them, that we know about their capabilities, and that we need their help. We offer them something they can't refuse. Which is? Information. The humans have been isolated for 2 centuries. They know nothing about the current state of galactic civilization, our technologies, our resources, our weaknesses. If this invasion force is as dangerous as our projections suggest, they'll need allies just as much as we need them. The Council spent the next 3 hours planning the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. They would approach the human boundary with a small, clearly peaceful delegation. They would request safe passage for diplomatic purposes, and they would pray that humanity was willing to listen. As the meeting concluded and the various representatives departed to brief their respective governments, Korthak Vel remained behind, staring at the tactical projections of the approaching threat. In 6 months, something would arrive that had already proven capable of destroying entire solar systems. The combined fleets of 17 advanced civilizations might not be enough to stop it, but perhaps with human help, they would have a chance. The question was whether humanity would be willing to break their 2-century isolation to fight for a galaxy that had largely ignored them. Admiral Korthak Vel had a sinking feeling that the next few months would determine not just the fate of galactic civilization, but the future of life itself in their corner of the universe. In the depths of space, automated sensors continued tracking the approaching anomaly, updating their estimates with each passing hour. The destruction was getting closer, and time was running out. The galaxy's last hope lay behind a boundary that had never been crossed, guarded by a species that had chosen isolation over expansion. Soon, they would learn whether humanity's legendary capacity for warfare was still available when everything they had ever known faced total annihilation. The diplomatic vessel Unity approached the human boundary with the most diverse crew in galactic history. Admiral Korthak Vel stood on the bridge alongside Prime Minister Zalanth, General Thexmora, and representatives from a dozen other species. Their ship broadcasted peaceful intentions on every known frequency, its weapons powered down and shields lowered in a gesture of absolute trust. "Human vessel approaching," announced the Unity's sensor operator. "Configuration unknown, it just appeared." Through the viewports, they could see a sleek craft materialize from apparent nothingness. It dwarfed their diplomatic vessel, though it moved with the grace of something much smaller. No weapons were visible, but everyone on the bridge felt the weight of its attention. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force," came a calm female voice over the communications system. "Unity, you are approaching restricted space with an unusual crew complement. State your intentions." Korthak Vel stepped forward. "Fleet Admiral Chen, I am Admiral Korthak Vel representing the Galactic Defense Council. We request permission to enter human space for urgent diplomatic discussions regarding an imminent threat to all civilizations." There was a pause. "Admiral, you've been monitoring our border installations." It wasn't a question. Korthak Vel felt his throat tighten. "Yes, Fleet Admiral. The situation requires complete honesty. We detected your defensive capabilities and now understand that humanity possesses technologies far beyond our own. And now you need our help. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Follow my ship. Maintain your current course and speed. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile action. The human vessel turned and began moving deeper into their territory. As the Unity followed, Korthak Vel watched his sensors with growing amazement. What had appeared to be empty space began revealing its true nature. Massive orbital platforms materialized around them, each one bristling with weapons that registered energy outputs beyond their instruments' ability to measure. "By the ancestors," whispered General Thex Mora. "How many installations?" "I'm counting 17,000 major defensive platforms just in this sector," replied the sensor operator. "And these appear to be the outer defenses." As they traveled deeper into human space, the scale of what humanity had built became apparent. Entire star systems had been converted into fortress complexes. Planets had been hollowed out and turned into weapon platforms. Space itself seemed to bend around installations that existed partially outside normal physics. "Fleet Admiral," Korthak Vel transmitted, "may I ask how long humanity has been building these defenses?" "Since the day we made contact with galactic civilization," Chen replied. "We learned very quickly that the galaxy contains many species who view newcomers as either potential subjects or potential threats. We chose to ensure that humanity would never be either. The Unity passed through what appeared to be a nebula, but the sensors revealed it to be an artificial construct. A cloud of microscopic defensive drones that could apparently materialize into larger weapons at will." "Fleet Admiral, our sensors detect weapon systems that appear to manipulate fundamental forces of physics. How did humanity develop such technology?" "Admiral, what do you know about human history?" The question seemed unrelated, but Korthak Vel answered honestly. "We know that humanity developed through constant warfare, eventually achieving peace through mutual exhaustion and cooperation." "That's partially correct," Chen replied. "What your historians missed is that human warfare pushed us to develop technologies that most species would consider impossible. When survival is at stake, humans have a tendency to break the rules others consider unbreakable. They emerged from the defensive cloud into a star system that defied conventional understanding. 3 suns orbited each other in perfect harmony, their solar output being harvested by collection arrays that fed energy into installations throughout the system. Planets hung in impossible orbits, held in place by gravitational manipulation technology. "Welcome to Sol Tertius," Chen announced, "our primary defensive coordination center." The Unity was guided to a docking bay that existed inside what appeared to be a hollowed-out moon. As they disembarked, Korthak Vel's team found themselves in a facility that looked more like a garden than a military installation. Trees grew in impossible spirals, water flowed upward in artistic patterns, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with controlled energy. Fleet Admiral Chen waited for them in a conference room with walls that appeared to be made of living starlight. She was tall for a human, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. Behind her stood other humans, generals, scientists, and officials whose presence radiated competence and quiet confidence. "Admiral Korthak Vel," Chen began, "before we discuss your crisis, there are things you need to understand about humanity's position in this galaxy." She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galactic arm. Human territory appeared as a small cluster of systems, but as the display shifted, their true presence became apparent. Monitoring stations existed in every major star system. Defensive installations were hidden throughout supposedly empty space. Humanity hadn't isolated themselves. They had positioned themselves to observe and protect the entire galactic community. For 2 centuries, we have watched. We've prevented 17 major wars through selective intervention. We've stopped 43 potential genocides by quietly removing key aggressors. We've guided technological development to prevent 68 species from destroying themselves with weapons they weren't ready to handle. The galactic representatives stared in stunned silence. "You've been protecting us," Prime Minister Zalanth said slowly, "without our knowledge." "The best protection is invisible protection," replied General Harrison, one of Chen's advisors. "A species that knows they're being protected often becomes dependent. A species that believes they're responsible for their own survival remains strong." Chen reactivated the display, this time showing the approaching extragalactic threat. "We've been tracking this invasion force for 18 months. We know what it is, where it came from, and what it wants." "What?" demanded General Braxton. "It's us," Chen said quietly. "An alternate version of humanity from a parallel galaxy. A version that chose conquest over cooperation, expansion over isolation. They've consumed every other species in their galaxy and are now looking for new territory." The room erupted in shocked discussion. The idea that humanity's greatest threat was another version of themselves added a layer of complexity no one had anticipated. "These alternate humans," Chen continued, "possess technology similar to our own but applied differently. Where we built shields, they built swords. Where we chose protection, they chose predation. The conflict ahead isn't just about survival, it's about which version of humanity deserves to exist." Admiral Korthak-Vel leaned forward. "Fleet Admiral, what do you need from us?" "Nothing," Chen replied, surprising everyone. "Humanity can handle this threat alone. Our defensive capabilities are more than sufficient to repel any invasion." "Then why are we here?" Chen's expression grew serious. "Because after this battle, everything changes. The galaxy will know what humanity truly is. The age of ignorance ends. When species realize that their survival has been dependent on our protection, when they understand the true balance of power in this galaxy, fear will replace ignorance." She stood and walked to the starlight wall, which seemed to respond to her presence. "We're offering you a choice, Admiral. We can return you to your territories with selective memory modifications. You'll remember that humanity agreed to help, but forget everything you've seen here. The galaxy continues as it has, protected but unaware." "Or," asked Prime Minister Zalanth, "or you stay and fight alongside us. You see what human warfare truly looks like. You witness capabilities that will change your understanding of what's possible. But in return, you become part of the new galactic order that emerges after victory." General Thex Mora's crystalline form flickered with agitation. "What kind of new order?" "The kind where humanity no longer hides," replied General Harrison. "Where our protection becomes visible and acknowledged. Where the galaxy accepts that some species are more advanced than others and organizes accordingly." The weight of the decision settled over the delegation. They could return home safely, ignorant of humanity's true nature, and trust that this mysterious threat would be handled without their involvement. Or they could witness the transformation of galactic civilization. Admiral Korthak-Vel looked at his fellow representatives, seeing the same thoughts reflected in their alien features. Fear of the unknown warred with scientific curiosity and military pride. "Fleet Admiral," he said finally, "the Galactic Defense Council votes to stay and fight." Chen nodded slowly. "Very well. Then let me show you what human warfare looks like when we're not trying to avoid attention." The starlight walls dissolved, revealing the true nature of Sol Tertius. They weren't inside a moon. They were inside a massive weapons platform that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that their science couldn't even detect. Around them, thousands of similar installations powered up for the first time in centuries. "Welcome to the war for reality," Chen announced as space itself began to bend around humanity's defensive grid. "Try to keep up." In the distance, alarms began sounding as long-range sensors detected the arrival of the invasion force. The enemy had come expecting to find another helpless galaxy ripe for conquest. Instead, they found humanity. The real humanity. And as the first shots of the most important war in galactic history began to fire, Admiral Korthakvel realized that the galaxy was about to learn why the charts ended at human territory. Some boundaries weren't meant to be crossed, some species weren't meant to be challenged, and some secrets were worth keeping until the moment they became weapons.